Women's Work Injury Symposium presented by the California Applicants Attorneys Association's Women's Caucus and co-hosted by the California Legislative Women's Caucus. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here today. The idea for a Women's Work Injury Symposium was conceived less than a year ago, and we are so honored by the caliber of speakers that are participating in this unique and important event. As applicants' attorneys, injured workers seek our assistance, usually as a last resort when their medical treatment is denied, when they can't get physical therapy or medications or surgery. Injured workers seek our assistance when they're not receiving temporary disability benefits while off work. And injured workers seek our assistance when they've lost their jobs and aren't receiving adequate compensation for their permanent disability. Unfortunately, in our practices, we see firsthand the impacts of work injuries. Loss of a car, loss of a spouse, loss of a job, loss of a home, depletion of a savings account, medication addiction, severe depression. We've seen injured workers experience complete and utter financial and emotional ruin. But we want to take a step back. What is best for California's employers, employees, and taxpayers? It's keeping workers safe and healthy, especially single mothers, breadwinner moms, women who work multiple jobs to support their families inside and outside of the United States, and hardworking women who earn minimum wage or less. That's the purpose of this symposium, to bring women's advocates together to identify problems women face in the workplace and propose solutions.
When a mother is injured at work, the entire family's financial and emotional stability is jeopardized. A study funded by the Commission on Health and Safety and Workers' Compensation found that after controlling for the types of jobs and the hours worked, injury risk through the age of 64 declines for men, but disturbingly increases for women. We are going to explore the causes for the higher risk of injury to women and the consequences to women who are working longer or returning to the workforce when their children are grown. What barriers do women face in reporting injuries and obtaining compensation? What types of injuries are most common in women? These questions will be addressed, and hopefully we will be able to come up with some solutions to preventing the most common women's workplace injuries from ever happening in the first place. Today, women represent half of the workforce. This is a significant increase to the number of women in the workforce from 4 decades ago when I was born. To the women in the audience, we've made great strides, haven't we? Today's working women are judges, lawyers, doctors, mathematicians, politicians, and a host of other very important occupations. We are also housekeepers, waitresses, farm workers, construction workers, carpenters, electricians, and iron workers. Unfortunately, many women work in low-wage jobs such as retail sales food preparation, restaurant servers, personal and home care aides, and hazards are common in these jobs. So injuries, illnesses, and sometimes even deaths occur.
I'm excited to be here. It's always amazing to be in a room full of women, and we are few in the assembly, so it's always nice to come to a place like this. It usually ends up being a therapy vent session for me when I'm in a room full of women, so if I start venting, thank you for hearing me out. You know, I was excited to be here when I was asked to speak here, and I thought about how I grew up, and I thought about my community, and I still live in the same community I grew up in, the people that are around me, and I thought about my mom in particular, who I grew up as a seamstress. She was a seamstress, and I remember her going to work every day at 5:30 in the morning, coming back at 6, and in between 6 and 7:30 was the time she had to handle whatever we were going to handle in the house and get it done for the day. On the weekends, I remember her bringing all this labor, manual labor to do at work, whether it was putting it in the little pieces where your belts go around, the little loops where they go around. And so there was always something to do even on her days off at home. And I think about the work ethic she instilled in us. When we talk about barriers, I think that's, we're workhorses. How many of you multitask? Not only are you single moms, but how many boards do you sit on? How many businesses are you running? How many family issues are you dealing with on a regular basis? You don't stop and think about it like, oh God, I have so much to do. Who do I give this to? You just add it on and you get it done somehow. You put your head down and you don't complain about it. And I remember my mom constantly telling me, I don't have time to worry about that stuff, or I don't have time to figure out how that system works. I just have to get to work, because the biggest thing that could happen is that if I don't do this, I'm going to lose my job. And then how do I provide for the 5 of you who are here? And so I think that that's one of the biggest cultures of just be a good worker, put your head down, and never worry about yourself. And we do it every day in our own houses with our kids, with our lives, with our parents, with our work. I mean, I think I was with my head down on the floor recently, sick. And the speaker had to tell me, go home, like you're really sick. I was like, oh yeah, you're right, I should go home. Thanks for reminding me that it's okay to put myself first sometimes. I think he was more worried that I was sitting next to the press box and it was going to look like a really bad picture. Remember, passed out on the floor. Do I take the day off? Do I complain? How are they going to retaliate against me? Am I going to get fired? And they all have a friend or a relative, or they themselves their own personal experience where they have tried to take that day off, where they have tried to ask for help, where they're out there injured and working every day, and they feel retaliated against and they can't do anything about it. One woman at Elisea who was there for 30 years, a month away from being able to retire, who got laid off because she was on disability for carpal tunnel syndrome from scanning and swiping our cards every day in the dining hall 3 times a day. Students don't realize, we put all these keys on there. We put all these little keychains on there, and we hand them over, and so that repetitive motion with that weight becomes an issue. But they told her, you know what, no, you are just old, and that's an issue of being old and not an issue of the job. That needs to be eliminated. So I think we need to be pushing for more and more of that, and more awareness amongst my peers to say, hey, this is important, and it's not just because it's a woman issue, it's because these are women who are breadwinners and raising our kids and our leaders and putting into the economy.
Some of the things that I've seen, and I'd like to start with, are the low-wage earners, which is out in agriculture most of the time. You see females, young females who are mothers. They take their children out there. A lot of times you find them, their baby in a cardboard box wrapped around with whatever blankets they have, and they're still working away. They're still working, thinning the vines. They're still working, doing what they can to survive, to provide for that little infant they have there with them, without any breaks provided, without any information regarding workers' comp. That's very, very important for everybody, is to make sure that you're aware of who the workers' comp carrier is. These women injure themselves out in the field. You might think that it's labor that's not, doesn't take a brain to do this labor, but it's repetitive. Just like we were talking about the carpal tunnel. A lot of times they sustain injury where they cut themselves. They need stitches. They're told, just go home and take care of it. Don't go report it to the hospital. Don't do anything about it. That results in infection. And here they are, not able to come back out to work. Their baby needs to be fed. They try to survive the best that they can. So I do see a lot of that going out in agriculture. With anything I leave you today is to make sure you notify all people that you know, all women that you know out in the workforce, no matter in what grade of job they work in. Find out who the carrier is. The employer has an obligation to post their carrier information on a bulletin board where the employees meet, where they take their breaks, so that they know who to turn to if they're injured. I saw this employee with his arm wrapped, and I asked him, he's from Guatemala, all the way to Sacramento from Guatemala. I asked him, what's wrong with your arm? Is your arm broken? He says, no, I got burnt by the fryer. And I said, oh, your entire arm? He said, yes, I got my whole arm burned. I go, did you go get treatment? He goes, no, I treated myself. I was told that if I went and reported this, I would lose my job. And I still have to pay for the transporter who got me here. So I can't afford to lose my job.
By far, for women, the repetitive strain injuries are the most common. We know that women are at the highest risk for upper extremity repetitive strain injuries. Part of it has to do with our size and the ergonomics and mismatch that is present. And did you know that the desks that were provided are actually designed and were calculated based upon the U.S. Marines from 1950 something, no joke. So all of the standard heights of desks and chairs and everything else are not meant for women, are they? But we're still working under conditions that are uniquely disadvantageous to us, purely from not making these changes as more of the women are entering the workforce.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and I want to commend the organizers, CAAA, for really thinking ahead about women in the workplace. It's an important component and aspect of the workforce. Women make up 43% of the workers' compensation claims filed. The numbers of workers' compensation claims have been steadily decreasing since the early 2000s. That is good news for both genders. In 2000, women filed 277,000 claims, and in 2011, they filed 239,000 claims. The number of claims among men are decreasing faster than among women, and so an increasing proportion or percentage of claims each year are from women. You can see that the majority of claims are among women aged 25 to 54. This follows the age distribution of the working population. The red bar shows the rate of claims that increases with age until 45 to 54. Women are at a greater risk for the causes of injuries listed here. They face 80% increase in risk from injuries caused by repetitive motion or by a fellow worker. When the cause of injury is fellow worker, these claims are often from either physical violence or harassment. Non-physical causes include mental and emotional injuries and illnesses. While fatalities overall are going down in California, fatalities among women have been increasing since 2004. In 2009, assaults and violent acts surpassed motor vehicle crashes as the most common cause of occupational fatality among women. When we look at the nature of injury, the injury that has the most gender disparity is carpal tunnel syndrome. 75% of carpal tunnel claims are among women. Just as a side note, we do not believe that the carpal tunnel syndrome nature of injury captures all of the cumulative trauma injuries cases. The other natures of injury that are striking in this disproportionate number of claims among women are mental stress and mental disorder claims. Women make up 64% of the mental stress claims and 63% of the mental disorders claims.
A conference like this is long overdue, and I hope it becomes an annual event, and the crowd every year grows and grows with more men and women here in equal numbers until the point that it starts dropping down because it's no longer necessary. The desks, protective gear is all made to fit men, and so often women are at greater risk for injuring themselves because the protective gear does not fit. Drug studies that are done, and how they're suddenly realizing that the effects of medication have a different impact on women than men, and it's not a matter of dosage and so forth. It's just body chemistry, how we're made up, and that there's never been these gender, different gender studies. Women participate in the studies, but you look at Group A and Group B. It's not men, women. Also, most drug tests, laboratory tests, are done on white male rats. Okay, yeah, I know, we have all dated some of them.
And I love what I do. I absolutely love standing next to hardworking people who have been hurt while serving their employer and doing a hard day's work and making sure that they get every benefit and all the treatment that they need. It's getting more and more difficult, but my love and my enthusiasm for the job doesn't wane because as it gets more difficult, my commitment seems to get stronger. But we know that continuous traumas account for at least 1 out of every 10 injuries sustained on the job. The likelihood of sustaining a continuous trauma stays the same or increases in women with age, while the risk for men decreases. Women have more cases of carpal tunnel syndrome, tendinitis, respiratory diseases, infections and parasitic diseases, anxiety and stress disorders. Women are less likely to report an injury out of fear of losing a job. Women are more concentrated in lower paying jobs, which are usually more injury prone, the ones that require more physical labor. Farm workers spend long hours doing hard labor in difficult weather conditions while exposed to harmful chemicals. 50% of hospitality workers are women. These are hotel and waitress jobs where these women are made to stand on their feet all day and have an incredibly high rate of back injuries. 61% of education workers, 72% of healthcare workers are women. Two highly stressful occupations. For nurses, they have a very physically demanding job while being exposed to bacteria. Some of those bacteria can be fatal. Protective equipment for chemical, blood, and bodily fluid exposure often doesn't fit properly. 43% of wholesale and retail trade workers are women that require repetitive motion that often produce cumulative trauma strains. Grocery store cashiers, for example, have an extraordinary rate of developing carpal tunnel syndromes. 30% of manufacturing jobs are women who work in assembly lines that produce repetitive strain injuries.
My trauma, my injuries are not from slipping, tripping, or falling, any of that. It's simply from swinging a hammer and wearing tools for 27 years. And then we had to fight to get my case won in court because the insurer was denying me. Yeah, denying me. It was obvious injuries that I had. I have lost my sobriety, my husband, my relationship with my son, self-esteem. I mean, the list would go on. I can keep you here all day and telling you what I've lost in the past 3 years' time in going through this whole process. It's because my 3 years is up in a month or two, and then I'll have no income. Very little, a very minor amount. I can't go on unemployment. Disability's up. Everything's up, and I'm stuck with what do I do now? I can't work. I still need more surgeries in my hands, carpal tunnel, obviously, back surgery, if I can get that done. But, you know, I'm stuck with no way to support myself in the next few months.
But we have many workers who have met that 2-year cap who are without any income at all and are still waiting for their surgeries to be approved. So, you know, these medical treatment reforms, which again I think disparately impact women because of many of the types of cumulative trauma and injuries that women sustain. The other area that I think particularly impacts women, particularly when we talk about these cumulative trauma injuries, is this reduction in compensation based on factors other than your actual work experience. So these changes, again, particularly affecting women in these cumulative trauma cases, are reducing compensation based on normal aging, right? So older women have career-ending injuries of a cumulative nature, and their benefits are directly reduced because of degenerative changes, which we know osteoporosis, degenerative arthritis, all of those kinds of things, heavy lifting, repetitive work are taking a huge toll on women.
My client was sexually assaulted at work, so I mean it wasn't just in her head, this actually happened in real life and it was an admitted injury, so the employer admitted that it happened. And I tried to get her an award of permanent disability, and the workers' compensation judge threw out all the medical reports because they said, or she said, it was a female judge, said that the medical professionals, the doctors evaluating the case didn't take into consideration the potentiality of menopause. And my client was in.
So women who don't go through a workers' comp claim or who aren't able to fully actualize from their employer and the insurance company what is deserved to her still have to make ends meet. And we have a variety of social programs that are designed to do that. And while I support those programs, we'll continue to support and push programs like food stamps and Medi-Cal and CalWorks, and we can go down the line. That just means that we're passing the burden of being able to take care of people from those who are part of that contract that the worker makes with his or her employer, puts in service, the insurance company that has been paid into, that is supposed to make a person whole, and instead we on taxpayers. As we look at that, projecting out that some of these fixes, hopefully, that kind of were rushed through the legislature in the last few years can be re-examined and looked at, because when we look at this in a more holistic way, we have to be real with ourselves. And we complain about the budget every year, having to decide where we're putting money, where that money should be in, but a lot of the problem, a lot of strains on budget have to do with the fact that we don't hold employers and insurance companies responsible for basically paying their fair share.
My injury was a result of repetitive, what do they call it, repetitive work, coming up and down out of that truck, which has low-level steps, delivering heavy packages, sometimes coming down out of the truck with the package in one arm and trying to grab the handrail with the other.
And as someone who has done a lot of factory work in my life, working my way through college, I understand issues that you deal with and the clients that you're working on behalf of, repetitive injuries, gender disparity, and how that plays into what we need to do in the legislature as it relates to policy issues and education. I see us as partners in that endeavor. You're going to give us the on-the-ground facts and data to help us understand how these issues impact people and women directly in their everyday lives and jobs. And we're to turn that into good policy to help back up safety, workplace safety, as well as equity in pay, and understanding how those things impact real lives. The fact that you're here in Sacramento talking to us is really important. And the fact that you bring us good policies and you bring us good information to help us do better jobs, I appreciate. I look forward to working with you. I'm thrilled to be the incoming speaker. I'm thrilled to be a woman incoming speaker, because I think it's about time that we start to level and balance that equation over time. And
Into it, I would like to acknowledge and welcome and have the following Assembly members stand so we can greet them. Assemblyman Fox. Right there. Oh, here you are. Thank you for being here. And Assemblyman Nazarian. Thank you for being here. We welcome you. As injuries to women increase in severity, which not only indicate the severity of the injury itself, subsequent surgeries from the injuries, catastrophic injuries, and deaths, the psychological impact increases due to not only the nature of the injury, but the women not being able to return to work, loss of income, their inability to fulfill mother-wife roles, and the loss of identity. The impact is greater as women are traditionally in society the care providers for their families. In my 22 years of practice, I have seen an increase in the severity of injuries that women face that I did not see, say, like 10 years ago. I see deaths due to motor vehicle accidents en route to work, and again, many of these injuries are denied because they do not, employers say they do not arise in the course and scope of employment, so we need to litigate those injuries. Also, amputations. A lot of the women are facing amputations of legs, arms, working in manufacturing plants, forklift injuries, and the list goes on and on.
Aging men actually don't have as many injuries. It's because they move into jobs with fewer hazards, and women end up in keep the jobs they got, and the hazards are still there. There's this report about immigrant women, which shows a variety of things happening. Particularly of concern to me is that Latinas represented 10.2% of the workplace fatalities in 2010, and that half of the Latinas killed in the job were victims of assault and violent acts. That women are much less likely to get compensation for musculoskeletal injuries. The cost of this is quite high. In fact, workers' comp only pays less than 25% of all of the costs, and the guy who did the study left out a bunch of them, so it's probably less.
The attack on me by my coworker was horrific. Sedgwick compounded my injuries through delays and denials of medical care recommended by its own selected medical experts. There has been little understanding in my case as to how workplace violence affects women victims and there has been almost no sensitivity to the after effects and unnecessary and unacceptable delays and denials of medical care needed to recover. I hope that by sharing my story, protection of women in the workplace and response to violence against women can improve. Thank you very much.
Here we are. November 6th was the date that Sedgwick denied her that treatment. We still don't have a decision on a request for authorization for treatment that was marked as crisis intervention and urgent by her doctor. So IMR, independent medical review by the state of California, still has not issued. This is not acceptable. We need to stop this from happening.
We have over 400,000 farm workers in the state. And most of them are living below the poverty line, don't speak English, and are undocumented. On the women's side, 28% of all of the farm workers in the state are women. And approximately 35 to 40% of all women in ag or out of ag will experience sexual harassment sometime in their working life. And immigrant women who are undocumented, who do not speak English, who are poor, who are raised in a different culture, and who do not know the laws that protect them feel more helpless and are more vulnerable to sexual harassment than their peers.
Tell you how much we appreciate that you've all assembled here in Sacramento today. It's not often that we get to stop and take a few moments to talk about how the law impacts women in different ways and how what we do in Sacramento impact women in different ways. And that women gather to talk about how the law impacts women in different ways. So I don't know if you know how important the fact that you are assembled here, how important that is. This does not happen every day in Sacramento, so thank you. It's extremely important that you come here for the message.
You know, there's just been an attitude about workers is that you are there to serve your masters. And you and me both, actually, all of us are there to serve those who are running the show. And when we get injured, really the best thing would be for us to just crawl in a hole and go away. And your stories and the situations that you have been through or that are the people your clients are critically important that they're brought forward, because I can assure you that the big corporate interests make sure that their voice is heard up here in Sacramento. But the voice of the people, the voice of the little person, and I mean little only in the context that there isn't a whole lot of money or power behind a single voice, but there's a huge amount of power and voice behind a group of people, working people. Most of us are working people. And it's very important that you continue to have that voice heard. We're frequently discounted, and I related on the floor of the Senate a situation that happened to me several years ago. I have heart disease in my family. And I was at a doctor's appointment. I was hitting that age where you realize you're not invincible. And I asked my doctor, my male doctor, what I could do to protect against heart attack. And he said, well, I don't know. We don't know. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't know? He said, well, frankly, we've really never studied heart disease in women. I said, what? It really is very important that we be strong and voice our concerns loudly. And of course, with the applicants' attorneys, a group that really is committed to helping injured workers, we need to keep forming those alliances and those bonds.
And I like to think of today as the beginning of the conversation with the Legislative Women's Caucus and CAAA, having an active voice about finding a way to address women's work injuries and the disparate issues that are going on between what's happening in the workforce between men and women's injuries.